Hey there, it's Kyle Boone, aka Strong Jaw, staff writer at CBS Sports. Welcome to the Eye on College Basketball Podcast YouTube channel. We've got a special show today. Mr. Jerry Palm, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Bracketology himself is back for another Bracketology banter. Yeah, that's right. Every Monday we're going to do this, recapping the wild weekend. Mr. Palm has a new bracket out on CBSSports.com. Of course, you can check that out. Palm, 27 days until Selection Sunday as of this recording on Monday. So it is officially Palm season. It's that time of year. We'll dive right in. And we have to go to the topic of the weekend, and that is Duke at Virginia. Controversy of college basketball right now. Duke down to a number 7 seed in your latest bracket projections. Lost by 22 on the road last week to Miami, but obviously the big loss on the road in overtime to Virginia is the big story here. Duke and Virginia were tied in the final seconds of regulation. Kyle Filipowski goes up for a shot as time expires. He gets fouled. Officials go to the replay and decide to waive off the foul. Big controversy, obviously, because officials incorrectly adjudicated the sequence, according to the ACC, who released a statement over the weekend saying that they incorrectly adjudicated the situation. Filipowski should have had 2 free throws to potentially win the game, as the game had already expired. So Duke ends up losing. They drop to a number 7 seed in your bracket. Mr. Palm, were you watching this game? What do you make of this madness, this chaos, and what it means for your bracket?
I didn't actually pick the game up until overtime. So I didn't see I saw replays, but I didn't see it live. First of all, the referees reviewed this. This isn't like just like a missed call, right? Where it's just a bang, bang thing and refs are going to miss calls and that happens. Yep. But these guys actually reviewed it and made the wrong decision based on the rules. And so it's a procedural review and they messed it up. You can't really have that. But regardless, this game is a win for Virginia and a loss for Duke. And the committee isn't going to treat it as anything else. Mm-hmm. So sometimes the committee might give a little bit of consideration, for things like injuries and other roster issues that teams have over the course of the year. But officiating mistakes, clock errors, whatever, the game is the game. So Virginia gets a win and Duke gets a loss, and it's too bad, but that's the way it is. And as a result of that win and a lot of the chaos at the top of the bracket this weekend, Virginia ends up moving up to the 2 line, and Duke ends up dropping down a little bit. And they dropped down to a 7, but they were a 6 before. So it's not a big movement, but still, it is unfortunate for Duke. And things like this have happened before. I remember one time Indiana got hosed on a call where there was a clock error and time ran out and they didn't get a possession or something like that. It was a long time ago. But the committee can't really do anything about that. They're not going to do anything about that. They certainly can't assume anything other than the result that happened. And so that's unfortunate for Duke, but it's just one game out of 34 or so they have time to make up for it.
Tough break for Duke, because basically what you're saying is it's tough luck. Like the break did not go the way that it should have gone. Duke probably should have won that game. I mean, Kyle Filipowski is a 77% free throw shooter. He had what should have been 2 free throws to win the game.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
They still could have won the game.
They still could.
Overtime, they just didn't.
They didn't. That's right. It played out the way it played out. You can't change it now. Duke bumps down to the 7 seed, down 1 seed line. It's a seed line bump. It hurts. If you're a Duke fan, it definitely hurts. If you're a Virginia fan, you got to be celebrating because you escape with a win in overtime. You move up in the latest projections. And so it goes. You can't change it. Let's bump to some other blue blood discussions from this weekend. Some interesting results. North Carolina snaps a 3-game losing skid, wins over Clemson, and does so pretty convincingly, moves the Tar Heels to the first 4 in the field for you. Kentucky moves to the first 4 out in the field for you. Lost this week to Arkansas, and then a really inexplicable loss to Georgia this week. How are you viewing North Carolina and Kentucky in your latest projections?
Well, I think inexplicable loss would be a good nickname, or title of the season video for Kentucky, because it feels like one inexplicable loss after another. And it's not just Georgia and South Carolina, but it's home to Arkansas. It's just been such an indifferent season for them. They're basically a one-hit wonder. They had that win over Tennessee at Tennessee, which is fantastic. They have chances to resume build from here, but we're not seeing it. We're not seeing this Kentucky team gelling to play to the level of their talent, which is considerable. And as a result, right now, they're not in the bracket. 4 weeks to go, plenty of time to get into the bracket and some winnable games on their schedule. But what's winnable for Kentucky right now? We'll have to see. But yeah, Kentucky's really struggling. North Carolina has a weird resume also. They had one quadrant one win for most of the last 6 weeks. Now they don't have any. They're 0-8 against quad one because Ohio State finally lost enough games to drop out of quad one. So, but they're still in the bracket because really that's the extent of their losses. They don't have any bad losses or anything close to a bad loss. They beat North Carolina State at home. So they do have a win over a team in the tournament. And I think there's one other off the top of my head. I don't remember it, but so it's a very blah resume also, but it's different than Kentucky's, in which Kentucky keeps shooting itself in the foot, but they've got the one good win. Carolina hasn't got the one great win, but they don't shoot themselves in the foot as much. But here's the thing about Carolina's resume. The worst record against quad one for an at-large team since I started tracking in 1994 was Oklahoma in 1998. Now, we didn't call them quadrants back then, but the team sheet was still divided in 4 segments based strictly on the RPI. They were 0-6 in quad one. That's the worst record. There have been some 0-5s. The last one, I think, was 2015. So it's been a while since somebody was winless against quad one and still made the NCAA tournament. But this year, you look at the bottom of this bracket, there's a lot lacking here. Yeah. And there is no better case against expansion for the NCAA tournament than looking at my bracket today.
Which you can do on CBSSports.com. Shameless plug there. Both Kentucky and Carolina have some chances to improve their resume before the regular season ends, and obviously they'll have postseason tournaments where they could potentially improve their standings as well. Kentucky gets Tennessee at home. Will be interesting. They also get Auburn and Vanderbilt on their home court in Lexington to close out the regular season. Also face Mississippi State, Arkansas, and Florida on the road. North Carolina has some interesting spots here, including at home on Monday against Miami. Go on the road at NC State and Notre Dame and Florida State. Also get Virginia and Duke at home. So it's not over. Some interesting games coming up for both of those teams, but 2 teams teetering ever so closely to the bubble right now in your latest projections. So something to watch. Palm, let's move to your bread and butter here of this show, which is, of course, your alma mater, Purdue. I feel like every time we talk, Purdue just keeps on losing, and that's just 2 weeks in a row. But Purdue loses again, second loss in 3 games. They lost last week to Indiana, falls on Sunday to Northwestern on the road in what I thought was a pretty shocking result. But Purdue, big picture, still 23-3. They have 9 quad one wins, according to the net. That's second in college hoops behind only Kansas. So no change for you, right, with respect to how you're projecting Purdue, which is number 1 overall seed in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's a lot closer now. But Northwestern is a team that's in the middle of the bracket. We don't think about Northwestern as a tournament team because they've been in one tournament ever.
Yep.
2017, I think. So you see loss to Northwestern and you think, well, that's automatically a bad loss. Well, not this year. This is a better Northwestern team. They're not a great Northwestern team, and Purdue certainly should have won that game, blew a late lead because, well, they've been turning the ball over too much. That's 16 turnovers in the loss at Indiana, 11 in the first half. They had 16 turnovers against Northwestern, and I think 12 in the second half of that game, 4 of them in the final minutes. And you're not going to be able to win games turning the ball over that much. And now they're going to play Maryland on Thursday. Maryland forced 15 turnovers and almost came back from 17 down to win at Mackey last month. So Purdue's going to have to get better in that regard, or they're not going to be on the top line of the bracket very long. But right now, they're still the overall number 1 because of the quality of their wins compared to Alabama's. Alabama has the best win between the 2 teams because they won at Houston, but Purdue's overall quality is better. And Alabama has that loss to Oklahoma, a team that's not in the bracket, and Purdue's losses are all to teams in the bracket. So that's why Purdue ahead of Alabama right now, but it's a very thin line.
Okay, so Purdue's lead on the number 1 overall seed maybe drops just a little bit, but still holding strong as projected number 1 overall seed. AP poll, by the way, changed on Monday. Purdue lost its number 1 spot, moved to number 3. Houston stayed at number 2. And Alabama moved up 2 spots to number 1. Alabama, also a number 1 seed in your latest projections, along with Kansas and Texas. How close are these 4 teams, all 4 number 1 seeds, and how do you view kind of the next few weeks kind of shaking out?
Yeah, these teams are all pretty close together, and I'd say that there's a bit of a line between them and the 2s.
Okay.
The best of the 2s right now, I guess, is Houston. That's my number 5 team. But Houston's resume is hurt by the fact they haven't played a great schedule. They did win at Virginia. And so they've got a few good wins, and they home lost to Temple. They've got a great record, and the net loves them because they're the number 1 team in scoring margin by a lot, and that's what the net is primarily measuring. But it's really the resume, just the strength of the overall resume just doesn't measure up to the teams ahead of them. Now, of course, Texas and Kansas are playing in the Big 12. They've got tough games every time they take the floor, quad 1 opportunities almost every time they take the floor. So they have a way to build their resume all the time, but also they can take losses that don't really hurt, but might be hurt enough to take them off the top line. Purdue and Alabama are a little bit more secure. They're ahead of them to begin with, but also they don't have quite as tough a schedule as the Big 12 teams do, all the Big 12 teams do, because that's the best league by far this season. But there will still be challenges for those 2 teams. But for now, those are the teams at the top. And I would be surprised if we get to Monday and it's still not those 4 teams in some order.
Okay. So what happens, Jerry Palm, whenever Oklahoma State welcomes Kansas into Gallagher-Iba Arena on Tuesday? Kansas loses by 10 points. Oklahoma State wins its 6th straight game. Oklahoma State moves to the number 2 seed line. Is that how that works?
Not quite.
Okay.
Not quite, but they get closer to off the bubble. They are on a good roll and picking up some pretty good wins. So maybe they'll get to the top half of the bracket, maybe, but not quite number 2 yet.
Okay. So
4
Kansas
weeks to go, though. Don't give up hope.
Okay. I'm not. Trust me. Let's go. Ride them, Cowboys. There is some movement on the number 2 seed line, however, as you kind of alluded to here. Houston, Baylor, the same. Still holding strong on the 2 line, but Virginia and UCLA up to number 2 seeds. Arizona, which lost to Stanford on the road Saturday, and Kansas State, which has now lost 3 of its last 4. Both of those teams drop off 1 spot to the number 3 seed line. Tell me about those changes there. Is it close? I mean, some of these teams, resume-wise, it feels like a little bit liquid situation depending on how the rest of this regular season shakes out in postseason.
Yes. Suffice it to say the 2s are closer to the 3s than they are to the 1s. Not that they're, a massive gap to the 1s, but it's a more obvious gap to me anyway, between the 2s and the 1s and the 2s and the 3s. Well, we talked a lot about Virginia. That win over Duke was able to push them up, but also it's the other losses, the Arizona loss, the Kansas State loss that made room for Virginia. 4 of the top 10 teams in my last bracket lost, and another 4 of the top 25 lost this week. So there was a lot of churning once you got to, the 2, 3, 4 seed lines, and even a little further down this weekend because of all the losses. Virginia benefited from that. So did UCLA. I have trouble reconciling UCLA and Arizona because their resumes are so different. Arizona's got 5 really good wins and 4 bad losses, relatively speaking. I mean, Oregon is the only team that beat them that's even on the bubble. Stanford, it's like Arizona gets up to play the good teams, but, sometimes just can't be bothered to take care of business in the games where they need to take care of business. UCLA, on the other hand, has got 4 good losses, quad 1 losses to good teams, but their best win is the annihilation of Maryland. It was something like 37 points at Maryland earlier in the season. That's still their best win. Maryland is a middle of the bracket team. So at some point, I'd like to see UCLA beat someone better than Maryland. Yeah. And in order to really give them some juice and maybe even compete for a number 1 seed, the problem is they don't have a lot of quad 1 games left on their schedule. In fact, it might just be the home game with Arizona to end the regular season.
Yeah, that's right. The only ranked team they face the rest of the regular season is that game you mentioned. It's Saturday, March 4th. At home against Arizona. They will also get the Pac-12 tournament, potentially to improve the resume. But UCLA is looking good. They just don't have the same opportunities that some of these other teams primarily out of the Big 12 get on a night in, night out basis. Mr. Palm, thank you for your time today. If you are watching this show, please go subscribe to the YouTube channel, the Eye on College Basketball Podcast YouTube channel. Go check out Mr. Palm's latest bracket on cbssports.com. You can find all his updated projections throughout the week leading up to Selection Sunday, which again, 27 days from now. Looking forward to it. Jerry, thank you for your time today.
All right, thanks.